Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to talk about the steamiest books I've read in 2023. I actually have 13. It's a random order. I basically just looked at all the books I read and just picked the ones that just stand out to me as being like having a lot of sex scenes or just really good sex scenes, or the ones that have been living rent-free in my mind this whole year. So basically this is not necessarily going to be like my favorites of the year, but just the theme was very good. I do have to say some of them are my favorites because I think like good theme is a reason why a book becomes my favorite. I know there have been discussions on BookTube as to, there's different camps, and that's fine. It's just, to me, I really love theme. I love reading about theme in books as long as it fits the book, obviously. But yeah, 13, and this is going to be in order of when I read them. So the first one is Bask or Burn by K.L. Mann. So this is the third and final book in her Tombstone University minis. Each book has at least one demon main character. So in this book, you follow a demon who has had a crush on his human professor for a while now. So this is actually an MMM romance because the professor actually already has a husband. And then one day they decide to all get together, all three of them. This was so hot. I think K.L. Mann does an amazing job at writing these short, steamy, good novellas. So yeah, I just had an amazing time with this one. And it just yes, this theme was very good. This was actually one of the first books I read this year, and so I started off with a hot bang. Next is actually a fan fiction, and it's Contradictions by Amber Sands. This is a Hermione fan fiction, so Draco and Hermione from Harry Potter, and this takes place at a sex club actually. And even though this I did feel like was a little bit too long, the theme in it was very, very good. Basically, Hermione has not been able, she has not had a very fulfilling sex life. So she decides to go to this magical sex club, and you basically write everything you're looking for. And she gets paired up with somebody. So she actually disguises herself, and the man that she's meeting asks her to put on a blindfold. So she's blindfolded and they do stuff together, and she actually does come. And when she does, her disguise slips, and she hears a man calling her by her name, actually her last name, Granger. So I think it's literally Granger. So she takes off her blindfold and realizes that the person is actually Draco. So she runs off, wants nothing to do with him. They actually work together, and actually in this fanfic, Harry actually has some sort of decent relationship with Draco. So she's mortified, but he actually comes looking for her because this is a BDSM relationship, or at least was a BDSM scene, and he tells her that they didn't do aftercare properly, so he wants to do that now. So even though she doesn't want to, eventually she agrees, so he does that for her, and then eventually they do start meeting up again. And this was so hot. Draco was so sexy in this book. I do have to say, even though it did have a lot of sexy scenes, I would have liked a little bit more variety. So she had this kink where she liked her being completely naked and him being completely clothed. And that was hot for the first couple. But eventually I'm like, give me one where it's different things, like not just the same thing. Aside from that, I did feel like the things we did get were very hot. And like I said, it was a lot that we got. So that is good. Next is a controversial one. It is Untouchable by Sam Ariano. So this is a very dubious consent, eventually consensual, non-consent type relationship. So this actually starts off with the hero sexually assaulting the main character. There was this other football player that assaulted her, and she reported him, and because of that she became the town pariah. And now 3 members of the football team, so Carter, the hero of this book, and then the guy that she assaults plus another guy, trap her in this classroom. And Carter tells her that she has 2 choices. Either he gets to face fuck her or actually fuck her. And since she's a virgin, she decides to go with that option because Carter is this town prince and his family is very well connected in this town. So she knows that she could have reported the other guy, but Carter she cannot really report. So she agrees, and then she becomes Carter's obsession. He kind of stalks her and is just like all in her business and cannot seem to let her go. So eventually she reluctantly agrees to kind of become his girlfriend. I do have to say, the reason it's on here is because the scenes we got after, because there's only, thankfully, one where there's actual non-consent. The other ones, like, there's some dubious consent in there, but other than that, like, this is not for the faint of heart. Like, please don't read this if anything I say makes you uncomfortable, or if you think that that is going to make or break the book. Because yes, it did make me uncomfortable, but it didn't break the book for me. I do feel like, aside from that first scene, the other ones, it's not like there's a lot of sex scenes in here, but I do feel like the ones we do get do sort of, I don't know, it just, they are kind of vital for their relationship. And yes, that said, there are some uncomfortable things in here, but I just, these characters live in my mind rent free. I keep thinking about them, and yeah, part of that is their sex scenes. And I did think that aside from the first one, the other ones were very hot. So yeah, but like I said, this is not for the faint of heart. Please don't read this. If dark romance or anything with non-consent, don't read this, please. I have warned you. Next are two books in the Say Spell series by Juliet Cross, and it's Witches Get Stitches and Always Practice Safe Hacks. These two are actually my favorites in the series, and I do feel like, especially with this one, a big part of that were the sex scenes. I think Juliet Cross writes amazing sex scenes. Her heroes are deliciously sexy, and some of them have a filthy mouth, which they can use any day. And this book actually has a Grim, and he can use his like shadows to do some restraints as well, so that was very, very hot. And this one deals with a werewolf, and werewolves are my favorite paranormal creature, so I always love that in books. Yeah, I just feel like these are the perfect mix of sweet and sexy, and I do feel like the sex scenes in this book very well fit the heroes and the heroines for them. So yeah, definitely two very steamy books I read in 2023. Next is a Fallen series by Nicola Davidson. So I read all three this year, and I thought so this is actually an erotica historical romance, so it definitely fits with the books I'm recommending. I thought she did a very, very good job with the sex scenes. Obviously, a majority of the book is smut, so obviously it's very fitting. But I feel like it's very different for all three couples, even though especially the second and third are kind of similar in the topics. Both of them deal with second chance romance, although in a completely different way. This revolves a sex club in historical settings, so that was very interesting to read as well. There's this big scene in the first book that was so hot. Like, she was engaged to be married, well, she is engaged to be married to this awful guy that she hates. So she goes to this Viscount. He's known for being very debauched. So they decide to have sex, basically, and get caught, so that these rumors fly around that she's damaged goods, and so that hopefully her fiance will not be interested in her anymore. Those things fail, so eventually, like, their grand finale is for her to be revealed, because everybody in the sex club usually or has to have a mask. So they decide to have her be center stage, and they reveal her, and that was so hot. Very, very good series. Next is The Frat Boy by Nikki Sloan. This is actually one of my favorite books I read this year, and I didn't think it would be, because this revolves around two people in college, and one of them is in a fraternity, one of them is in a sorority, and every year there's this competition between fraternities and sororities. One of them accuses the other one of cheating, and like it turns into like this big mud fight, and eventually they get both kicked out of their respective fraternity and sorority. So they both need a job, they both need a place to live. So they both enter this, or they both enter this ad and this ad is actually advertising making adult films, but it's a job plus a place to live, because you have to make at least one a month to afford living at this place. And then every extra adult movie you make, that money goes to you, basically. So they meet each other again at the audition. So they both decide to just audition, and then they both get hired. So it's a forced proximity situation where they're making these adult films together plus living together, and it's so hot. Colin is so sexy, and these scenes are so good because obviously it's adult film, so it's not just between them, other people get involved too, and it's multiple people as well. And even their sex scenes outside of the adult films are also very hot. I think Nikki Sloan did a very great job with this book, and I'm just very excited to read more by her. The Company of Fiends by Catherine Moon. So this is a white shoes romance. Usually white shoes romances are very steamy. So this takes place at this theater. You saw in the first book, actually, if you've read The Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, but it is this theater where humans and monsters have sex and other people watch, usually monsters, but also humans. And you follow one of the women working there, and you follow as she falls in love with five different monsters. So lots of sex. And like I said, and just like with the frat boy, sometimes it is public where other people get to watch her, but also a lot of it is in private. And there's also some MM stuff in there, which I love that. I always prefer that in my white shoes romances when some of the men also have a relationship together. It's not just all focused on the woman. So there are scenes in here with multiple people, and it was very good. Very steamy. The Bully by Sophie Lark. This one I didn't want to recommend it because you have to do a lot of pre-reading before getting to this one. But on the other hand, this was the steamiest Sophie Lark I've read, and I did want to include it. Basically, this is the third book in her Kingmaker series, and before reading Kingmakers, you do have to read the entire Brutal Birthright series, and preferably the first two in her Underworld series. And before getting to this one, you do have to read the first two books in the Kingmaker series, otherwise this will not make any sense to you. But this is basically a sort of Hermione fanfiction, sort of. Basically, you follow Kat and Dean is basically the Draco character, Kat is the Hermione character, and Dean was basically the bad guy in the first two books. He was the enemy, especially of the hero in the first book, the heir. He saw Kat doing something in the second book that now he has leverage over her, and he is using that to get her to do his bidding. And what he wants is basically a sex slave for a month. So she agrees because she's also very intrigued by him. Starts their month where she does everything he wants, and basically what he wants is everything. Like any scenario you can think of, he wants to do. So basically they do that. So this has, like, the amount of sex in here is very high, especially comparing it to the other two books in the series. This was so good, and I really loved watching them. This is my favorite couple in the Kingmaker series, and I really loved because you do get to see them exploring their relationship in the bedroom. Like, their sex scenes actually move the plot forward, but also move their relationship forward, which I always really love. This was so good. This was so good. And I read some things in here that I haven't read in other books. So also, like, I was introduced to some new things in this book. So I really love that as well. Top Secret by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. This is another romance set in college. Basically, you follow Keaton and Luke, and they are fraternity brothers, and they're actually, there's only 2 rooms on their floor, and so they both have a room on like the 3rd floor, and they hate each other. They basically, one of them is, Luke is very grumpy and Keaton is very sunshine, and Luke just hates the fact that Keaton always plays his music really loud, and they're just like from 2 different sides of the track. Basically, Keaton is very rich, very privileged, and Luke has a very horrible home life and doesn't really have a whole lot of money. One day, Keaton's girlfriend wants to have a threesome with another man, so he goes on this app and tries to find said man, and he starts talking to Luke, and through that, they don't know who each other is, but through that, he kind of discovers more of his own sexuality. And eventually they meet and they discover who they have been talking to. And I have to say, their romance is so explosive. The reason it's on this list is because, yes, when they're together, that is hot as well. But throughout, when they're texting together, those are all, like, also very hot. Like, it's just so sexy. And I do love the fact that he gets to explore his sexuality. And, you know, it's just like little things while they're talking that gets him hot, and the way they think about each other, also very sexy. And then there's this scene where, because Luke, his job is actually a stripper, and there's a scene where Keaton, they accidentally go into the wrong club, because there's 2, like, strip clubs together, one with male strippers and one with female strippers. So they actually accidentally go into the wrong place, and Keaton sticks around and actually sees Luke. That gets him so hot, and that scene after is so sexy as well. I just really love that. I love the fact that Luke's very dominant. Things that come out of his mouth is so good. So yeah, this is very short. It's less than 300 pages, but I could not stop thinking about these 2, and yeah, it was very, very steamy in my opinion. Next is Powerless by Elsie Silver. I just feel like even though the amount of smutty scenes are pretty similar in each and every book, I feel like this one, it might be because it's my favorite in the series, but also I just feel like the scenes we got with Jasper and Sloane, I've been thinking about the most. Like the way he makes her crawl was hot. There was this scene where he was in the shower and she walks in, and the things that happen there is also very hot. Like there's just scenes in here that I keep thinking about, which is why I just put it on this list, because it's not just that romance that I think about, it's also the smutty scenes in here that I think about as well. So this is actually a hockey romance because you follow Jasper Gervais, and he's the adopted son of the Edens and she's the cousin of the Edens. And he was basically adopted when he was 15 because his home life was horrible. So she's had a crush on him ever since she first saw him, but he was always like 5 years when one of them is 15 and the other one is 10 is giant. And it's also still very significant when she's a teenager. So he has turned her down on multiple occasions. And now she's getting married to somebody else. And she finds out that he's been cheating on her wedding day, so she runs off with Jasper, and that's finally when they confront their feelings. And it was so explosive and so hot, and I really love them. The Holly Knight series by Lee Jacot. So basically this is a series of novellas, and each one is set in a different holiday, but I just say you can read them anytime you want. I haven't really been reading them at set holidays, but this is just like short, smutty, and to the point, and I loved it. And I think the smutty scenes in here are done very, very well. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. And then I read Her Soul to Take and Her Soul for Revenge by Harley LaRue. First of all, Harley LaRue is one of my favorite smutty authors. I think she does sex scenes very well. This is basically paranormal romances following humans and demons. So good. And yes, once again, the smutty times in here are very hot. In this world, the way you show that somebody means something to you is when you pierce them. And both books revolve some scenes where one of them gives the other one a piercing somewhere on their body while having or during sexy times. It was so good. It was so hot. I know when I'm picking up a Harley LaRue, it's gonna be good in the steam department, so that is very good. And then last but not least is another White Shoes, and it's Pucking Around by Emily Rath. I'm also actually talking about the first, like the novella, That One Night. That one was also very, very steamy. So this is a White Shoes hockey romance, basically one girl and 3 guys. And 2 of the guys actually also have a thing, so it does have MM elements, which once again, I prefer in my White Shoes romance. And all of them are hockey players. Well, one of them is an equipment manager, but he used to be a hockey player. And it's just like a good, fun, smutty, good time. Like there's a lot of sex in here, and the sex we get is very good. That's all I have to say. It's so good. Emily Rath has a wild imagination, and it was so good. I don't really know what to say about this book. It is very big. It has almost 700 pages. I believe the ebook version has over 700 pages. You won't go 50 pages without a sex scene in this book. And this girl is horny, and she's horny a lot. And all of them are pretty horny for each other. So it was good. And yeah, if you've not read this one and you like White Shoes, I would recommend it. I do have to say, I think I prefer my White Shoes romance to be paranormal. I still need to test that theory out, because so far I've only read one series of White Shoes that was paranormal, and I read this contemporary romance, and I don't know, I feel like I'm more likely to suspend my disbelief if it's in a paranormal setting. But having said all that, I did give Pucking Around 4 stars still, and especially the sex scenes, I gave at least 2 stars for the sex scenes. So yeah, those were the steamiest books I read in 2023. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. Also, I would really love to know some of the steamiest books you've read in 2023. I'm always on the lookout for those, so definitely let me know in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did, and thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.